Hello everybody, Yom Tov, and here are your folk tales and fables for this week. Now I do apologise, I know it's a day late, but as you can understand, things are a little bit difficult at the moment, and what with one thing and another, I know I'm behind and I'm doing my best to try and catch up. So I'm going to head into this without further ado. Now I was asked by our Angie, hi Angie, if I would, sorry I've got incredibly itchy nose today, I think I'm either going to get vexed or something. Anyway, I was asked to do some more Greek mythology. So I've looked into that, and today I thought it'd be a good idea to bring you the 12 Labels of Hercules, obviously known as Heracles in Greek mythology and Hercules in Roman mythology. But I'm bringing you the Greek mythology today, so I hope that's okay with all of you. So we're going to start off with that, and I'm going to have to refer to my laptop because as a kid, I knew all the 12 Labels of Hercules. Unfortunately, being just a little tad over 21, I happen to have forgotten what they all are. So I'm just going to have to go down the list and tell you what they are, and I'm keeping an eye on the time so I don't go over the time and bore you all to death. So without any further ado, let's dive into the 12 Labels of Heracles. Right, so Heracles, the greatest of the divine heroes in Greek mythology, and it says also known in the West by his Roman name of Hercules. But for this, we're going to stick with Heracles. He was the son of the god Zeus and the immortal Alcmene. There are many stories of Heracles' strength and heroism, but the most well-known centres around the 12 Labels he was forced to perform. Driven mad by the goddess Hera, who was the main goddess. She was the wife of Zeus. Now, Zeus in Greek was known as Jupiter. In Roman mythology, Hera in Greek was Juno in Roman mythology. But like I said, we're sticking with the Greek today. Heracles killed all his own children, and to atone for that awful crime, he had to perform, it was originally 10 tasks that he had to do. But he had an arch enemy called Eurystheus, and he raised the number to 12. What a nice man he wasn't. So, the first of these labours, he was to kill the Nemean lion. Now, with his bare hands, Hercules killed this lion that was attacking the city of Nemea, and he wore its fur as a cloak afterwards to demonstrate the victory he had over killing. Apparently it was this huge lion that was carrying off grown men, not just children and younger people. This lion was so ferocious, it was just grabbing a hold of big husky men and just taking them off, and just completely raising Cain, total havoc with this lion. So, like I said, Heracles went in, biff, baff, bosh, kills it, skins it, and wears its fur as a cloak. Now, I'm sure that wouldn't be politically correct today, but we are talking about thousands of years ago, and that's what was done then. His next task was to kill the Hydra. Now, the Hydra was a fire-breathing monster. It had the body of a lion, I believe, and it had 9 heads that were all like snakes. And it was lethal. Absolutely just lethal, this Hydra. And anybody who went up against it, it just got rid of them, just like that. It was known to be just, it was inconceivable that anybody could even conquer it. It was said to be unconquerable. So Heracles was sent in to do the job. So Heracles went along with a friend called Iolaus. He was able to kill it, but it wasn't easy because every time they cut off a head, 2 more would grow back in its place. So between them, Heracles and Iolaus cut off all the heads, and they sealed the wounds with fire so the heads wouldn't grow back. Stopped the Hydra from regenerating, and therefore it died. Because it was basically the 9 heads that kept it going. The next one was to capture the golden or Ceranaean hind. Now, what Heracles did was, instead of killing it, now a hind is a kind of, I believe it's a bit like a deer, some kind of deer. He had to capture it alive, and he had to present it to his enemy, Eurystheus. He actually chased it for over a year, and when he caught it, he then, after handing it to Eurystheus, he was then told to hand it over to the king. But when he let go of it, it just ran back to where it had come from. So that was a bit of a waste of time, just in my opinion. I don't know what you think. The next labour was you had to capture the Erymanthian boar. Well, you know what a boar is. It was a wild and powerful boar on the loose and had to be captured and brought to Mycenae. He successfully captured the beast after listening to advice from Cretan on how to capture it. So he managed to do that one. His next job was to clean the Augean stables in one day. Now, King Augeas had a stable of divine cattle, and the cattle feces were poisonous, and it was the kind of droppings that, when they fell out of the cattle's behind, it didn't just lie there, it seemed to grow and form a mass and let off this awful pungent stuff that if inhaled could kill you, if you touched it, it could kill you. So what Heracles did was he rerouted the rivers Alpheus and Peneus, and then he was able to get the rivers to go in one direction so that the whole stables could be cleaned in one day. But it was like a constant effort to get them to swill the whole thing out. But he had to push these rivers together to get them to go in this one direction. Now, it doesn't make clear whether or not this became then one long permanent river. It just said he pushed them together for that particular task. So I don't know whether they were able to spring back to the position that had before or what. It doesn't make that clear. Number 6 was to kill the Stymphalian birds. Now, these were sacred to Ares, Ares, of course, was the god of war, known as Mars in Roman mythology. The Stymphalian birds had beaks of bronze and were incredibly violent, and they were overrunning the city of Arcadia. And the birds had migrated into a swamp. So Heracles, he used a rattle given to him by Hephaestus, who was the Greek god of, he was, oh, what's the word I'm thinking of? He moulded iron, the god of iron. He worked with iron, and I believe the Roman equivalent was Vulcan. And he worked with making, iron swords and iron equipment and stuff like that. He was the god of that. So Hephaestus made this rattle, gave it to Heracles, and Heracles then scared the birds by waving this rattle around. I would imagine it would make the same kind of noise that the sort of rattles that you get at football matches, the ones that make that awful sound that you wave them round and round. And when the birds jumped up and started to fly off in fright, Heracles then used his bow and arrow and killed them one at a time. So that's how he managed to complete that task. Number 7 was to capture the Cretan bull. Now, it was a bull, this bull was causing absolute havoc on the island of Crete. It's only a Greek island I haven't been to, actually. Heracles was tasked with capturing it, and he did so, and with his bare hands, he actually wrestled the beast to the ground, and he sent it back to the mainland. Nobody says what happens to it, but he gave it a good wrestle. Obviously, the beast was exhausted and sort of said, I've had enough, Heracles, just pack me up and send me back to Athens. And I think that's probably exactly what he did do. Got him into a crate and sent him off. And that's just my sort of take on the story. It's been such a long time since I've read these. Right, number 8. His task was to steal the mares of Diomedes. Now, King Diomedes of... there's always been an argument as to how you pronounce this place. When I was a kid at school, the teacher always said Thrace. Thrace. Then, when I got to uni, somebody said, oh, it's Thrace or Thrace. And I thought, well, that sounds a bit pretentious. So I thought, you know what it is? I'm going to stick and throw caution to the four winds. And I'm going to stick with Thrace because that's how it was when I was a child. And it was what a teacher told us to say that word. So I'm going to say it back. But if anybody can correct me as to the proper pronunciation of this place, I'll be very, very grateful to you. Well, King Diomedes of Thrace had trained his horses to eat humans. And Heracles' job was to bring these mares back to King Eurystheus. I'd forgotten was a king. That was a king, yes, that's right. He was the one who gave them all the tasks to do. But they were staunch enemies. And I think that's why, he didn't like him very much. Heracles went to Thrace. He stayed awake all night until Diomedes fell asleep before he cut the bronze manger that the horses were tied to He then chased the mares to the end of the peninsula before he dug a ditch all the way around them so they couldn't escape, therefore creating an island. Then Diomedes appeared. Heracles went and killed Diomedes. He fed him to his own mares, and that calmed them down enough so he could then sew their mouths shut and take them back to King Eurystheus. Tell you what, Heracles is particularly creative, isn't he? Number 9. He had to obtain the belt of Hippolyta, Queen of the Amazons. Right, he had to obtain this belt. And the Queen of the Amazons, we all know the Amazons, they were a fierce tribe of warrior women. Hippolyta was obviously very impressed with Heracles and all his manly daring do, and she actually was prepared to give him the belt. She was prepared to hand it over to him. But Hera, who actually hated Hercules, don't forget Hera is the wife of Zeus, she appeared before the Amazons and saying that someone wanted to steal the queen away, and that person was Heracles. So then all the Amazons turned on Heracles, who then believed this was all a plot by Hippolyta to kill him. And Heracles then killed all the Amazons, one by one, including Queen Hippolyta, and took the belt. So my opinion of Hera is going down and down because she doesn't play fair. I don't know what you think, but she just doesn't play fair. Because she's the one who, said he had to pay for his crimes. That's fair enough. Give him the task to do. That's fair enough. He's already got an enemy in King Eurystheus. Eurystheus, beg your pardon. But Hera is going along and muddying the waters, so I don't think that's particularly fair. But that's how the gods behaved, very badly. Now, the final, no, that's not right at all. The 10th task, I was just thinking because he originally had 10. He had to obtain the cattle of the monster Geryon. Now, again, this was another order by Eurystheus. Heracles travelled to steal the cattle from this massive giant called Geryon. Now, the giant attacked Heracles, but Heracles took his bow and arrow and shot them at Geryon. And one of the arrows pierced him in the forehead. So Heracles then got all the cattle, and Hera was in the background desperate trying to interfere with him gathering the cattle up to take them back to King Eurystheus. But Heracles was having none of it and managed to deliver the cattle back to him. Now, the 11th task, he had to steal the apples of the Hesperides. Now, Eurystheus claimed that slaying the Hydra, because Iolaus had helped him, and the way he cleaned the Aegean stables, because the rivers did the work, didn't count, and that's why he gave Heracles 2 extra labours, because he felt that getting Iolaus to help him with the Hydra was cheating, and he hadn't done the task himself. And by pulling 2 rivers together, it was the rivers that cleaned the stables, not Hercules physically, getting down and dirty and with his broom and mop and bucket and what have you. I mean, I can see where Eurystheus is coming from, to be quite honest with you. If you're given a job to do, you do it. You don't cheat. And you don't find an easy way round. I can understand why Heracles did it. He was obviously a very creative thinker. But at the same time, you've got to be doing it as you're instructed. But these times of gods, and I mean, Heracles was half god himself, and all their backwards and forwards and what have you. It's enough to make your head spin, don't you think? Right, so anyway, he was now tasked with stealing the apples of the evening nymphs, the Hesperides. Now, after he found the garden where they were, Heracles found the god Atlas. He was there holding up the heavens. And since Heracles couldn't reach the apples himself, he asked Atlas to grab them, while Heracles himself held up the heavens. Atlas agreed, got him the apples, but then Atlas decided that he didn't want to hold up the heavens anymore. And he decided he was just going to leave Heracles to do the job from now on, and he was off. But Heracles tricked him into giving him the apples and saying he would remain to hold up the heavens, but first he needed Atlas to hold the heavens while he adjusted his cloak. So Atlas came back, started holding up the heavens again, just as he's watching Heracles buttoning up the top of his cloak, and then Heracles stands and goes, "Ha ha, fooled you," gathers up the apples, and he's off back to Eurystheus, having completed that task. And Atlas was taken in and goes back to holding up the heavens forever. So, there you go. Now, the last task. Capture and bring back Cerberus. Now, Cerberus, as we all know, was the three-headed dog that guarded the gates of the underworld, where Hades lived. And I believe his wife was Proserpine, I think. I'm not sure. I'm sure her mother was, I can't ever remember which way round it is. Her mother was either called Demeter or Ceres, and she was the goddess of the harvest, sort of like the earth, and all growing all the produce for us to eat from the earth. And her daughter was either called Penelope or Proserpine, and there was some kind of deal done where Hades captured this either Penelope or Proserpine, and she had to live with him in the underworld, I think, for so many days of the year. And then there were so many days which she could leave and go back and see her mother. But I'll have to look into that story a bit more for you. Well, anyway, Hades' dog was called Cerberus. It had 3 heads, and it guarded the gates to the underworld. And Heracles' job was to go capture this 3-headed dog and bring it back to Eurystheus. So Heracles went and asked Hades if he could bring Cerberus with him. And the god agreed that he could, so long as he was able to subdue the beast with only his bare hands. And as we've come to expect from Heracles by now, he was successful. He slung Cerberus on his back before returning from the underworld to present the beast to Eurystheus. And once he'd done that, he was actually able to, I mean, there's no way that Eurystheus would be able to keep Cerberus, because Hades would want him back. And I would well imagine that if Eurystheus had got in the way of any of Hades' desires, I would well imagine that Hades would take his revenge. And I wouldn't personally like that. So I think it was a case of, right, here's the dogs, I'll take them back, and now I'm done. And that was Heracles' 12 labours. And that's what he did. So, I've read you those. Now, I am going to read you another story. Right, I am going to read you just a short story, and it's about Perseus slaying the Medusa. Because I know that Angie asked about the Medusa. I'm sure she did. So, Angie, if you asked about the Medusa, love, here it is. And it says, there are many great myths about the legendary hero Perseus, but the most famous would have to be the slaying of the Medusa. Now, King Polydectes of Cerberus wished to marry Danae, Perseus' mother. Danae, I think it's Danae, sorry about that. Perseus didn't approve of this, and it caused a rift between the two men. So Polydectes plotted to send Perseus away in disgrace. Now, at a lavish dinner party, Polydectes asked every guest to bring a horse as a gift. And since Perseus didn't have any gift to give, he asked Polydectes what he wanted. So in an attempt to get rid of Perseus for good, Polydectes asked him to bring him back the head of the Medusa. And her gaze turned people to stone. Well, Perseus had to get some help. And I am sure that it may have been the goddess Athena who helped him, and she gave him a polished shield. I'm absolutely certain it was the goddess Athena who helped him. I'm sure she had a soft spot for Perseus. Well, he got a polished shield, he got a knapsack, and an adamantine sword, and he also got Hades' helm of darkness, which made him invisible. And he headed out to kill the Medusa. He used his polished shield to view a reflection, and as he crept up to her, he cut off her head and put it in the knapsack. Of course, afterwards, I am certain that when he, and you can correct me on this, and it's not in front of me, so this is coming out of here, but I am absolutely certain that when Perseus returned to his mother's home, where Polydectes was, of course Polydectes wasn't expecting Perseus to come home. He thought the Medusa would have finished him off, you see. And I'm absolutely certain the story goes that when Perseus turned up, he said, I've got the head of the Medusa in my knapsack. Polydectes didn't believe him. And he said, prove it to me. And, you know, he lifted the head of the Medusa out of his knapsack. And of course, she was still able to turn people to stone if they looked at her. And of course, she'd be looking at them. And I'm sure that Polydectes looked at her and he turned to stone. But if I've got that wrong, please tell me. But I'm certain that's what happened. Because I know there was a story elsewhere about somebody using the head of the Medusa to turn someone to stone. So if it wasn't Polydectes, well, it was obviously someone else. So, guys, oh, and just as a fun fact, and this is something that I didn't know, but apparently the late, great and much loved Gianni Versace used a likeness of the Medusa's head for his own brand. There must have been something about it that he liked, but that's what he used to illustrate his fashion brand. So there you go. Right, well guys, I've come to the end of this week's Folk Tales and Fables, and I do hope that you've enjoyed it. If you have any suggestion for next week's, then please let me know in the comments. As always, I will do my best to fulfill it. If not, then I'll find some more folk tales from elsewhere. I do hope you've enjoyed today's stories. Thank you very much for being here, and thank you very much for watching and for listening to me telling you the stories. I do love all of you, and I will see you again very, very soon. So in the meantime, please take care, continue to stay safe, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye, guys. Bye-bye.